Part 11, 18 minutes to go.
And they're terrible spin-offs. These two things alone would be well worth much attendant risk, in my estimation.
It's worth the risk in the country I don't live in, and the consequences I would never have to suffer.
Who dares, after all, wins.
Who dares wins? Who dares wins? This is a guy who regularly argued for the Pareto principle, where 10% of fucking people are doing 80% of whatever. Is it because they dare? Or is it because there's people who operate in a certain way in certain realms with the tools that happen to fucking quote unquote win their circumstances indefinitely? He who dares wins. Great. I'll tell that to every failed entrepreneur and restaurant owner and person who's dared. I'll tell that to myself and all the things I've dared and never fucking won.
Could we ask anything more of any single four-year administration? But there is even more on the table, as there are more remarkable actors involved. The last time I saw Tulsi Gabbard was in DC during a discussion hosted in this strangest of all possible worlds by Russell Brand. I had spoken with her at length, as in the case of Kennedy, on my podcast.
It's like all of the people he now shows an affinity for have suffered his same condition of this slowly chipping away of their capacity to be coherent or present in a normal way. Russell Brand, like, you can look at old writings of mine where I'm praising Russell Brand because he was saying a lot of what felt like very true, real shit to the moment. He was speaking to a lot of things that were not being discussed very well. And now he's touting, like, Christian savior signal protection, like like every one of his examples are people that have like spent too much time in the public eye, lost their footing, more has been discovered about them, their character has kind of played out across too many people who are willing to report back on it more accurately than the initial sycophants. And so yeah, bizarre world indeed. Why you would feel compelled to align yourself with somebody like that. And notably, none of the people in your field or other academics or people who are not about the brand lifestyle to bolster your points and your observations, I think is worth considering.
Although only once. What is Lieutenant Colonel Gabbard like on the personality side? Moderately extroverted, higher in assertiveness than enthusiasm. She is no giggling girl. Perhaps her military experience mitigated against taking that sometimes charming, but often too easy route. Markedly low in neuroticism, as befits a woman who pursued a true military career. Agreeableness? Ms. Gabbard cares genuinely about those she served and continues to serve, although I would say she does so in
This idea of so and so cares about such and such. My mom was physically and verbally abusive my entire childhood. And if you were to ask her on any given day whether or not she cared about me, cared about my brother, cared about how we turned out, she would assert that full throated, full chested. She would say, I care, I love my children, da 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 da. All the while, and not until I got older did I have the language, the books, the understanding, the studies to grasp the dynamics and the generational trauma stuff and yada yada yada. But it's not. It is such an imprecise and unfair framing of how to evaluate somebody. Oh, I care. Oh, I care about the children, they said at DCS, where I worked for a couple years. And you would never believe the amount of people who care about children that will fudge their paperwork, that will use intimidation to scare parents into compliance. It under the veil of care. So I am seriously and persistently suspicious when somebody invokes care to then tell me about how great somebody is. What legislation do they pass? Who are their friends? Give me their environment that they're plugged into, and when it's the crazy conspiratorial bullshit, ass-kissing, cynical one of the Tulsi Gabbards and the Trumps, sorry, I don't think you care. I don't think you know what that word means.
In the temperamentally conservative manner that is part patriotism and part respect for the intrinsic dignity and worth of every person, rather than in the oft cloying, false, and morally self-righteous manner that so often characterizes the so-called allies of the oppressed on the side of the progressive left.
Again, if you want to criticize the left, let it be over the corporatists that they've bent over and taken it from. Let it be over the legislation they've ignored. They're sacrificing of fucking unions and whatever the fuck else. And you know what? They're learning from that and doing that better now. And you're unwilling to see or acknowledge that because it's a lot easier to show them in one of their more disingenuous moments that still, on its worst day, is a show of a certain kind of solidarity that you would never see out of a Republican.
She's also very smart. Without the more showy brilliance of Ramaswamy, who we still have to discuss,
oh God, get ready for how much we're going to belabor how smart, quote unquote, Ramaswamy is. I remember that. That stuck out to me.
Down to earth in that intelligence, and is as conscientious as you would hope an ex-military member and influential political leader might be. Gabbard is the sort of woman who would make of someone a favorite aunt, a close confidant, a trusted friend. If you wanted sane advice, she'd be your pick. She doesn't have the stunning entrepreneurial flair of Musk, Kennedy, or Ramaswamy, but her presence on the X-Men team would add to that excess of plasticity some true stability, the other personality meta trait. This is particularly important when the team in question will be tasked with so much administrative and managerial responsibility.
Which is just the nature of the presidency and is what you would hope anybody occupying that space would do, would be plastic enough to handle different things and yet stable enough to indicate to the rest of the world that we haven't lost our fucking minds.
It is great to have someone around like Vivek, for example, who spins off new ideas at a constant rate.
Because that is what we want. Just spinning off ideas. Good ideas doesn't matter. As long as they're being generated and as long as they're said with a lot of enthusiasm and like, I'm going to get a VC behind me energy, we're golden.
But I'd bet on Gabbard to implement effectively and to pay attention to all the details, although Musk also excels at that, to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. She's a very difficult person not to admire, not to feel lesser than in her presence. She's solid, competent, straightforward, admirable, brave, patriotic, and tough. She'd be a truly thoughtful presence in the Trump X-Men team, which might otherwise tilt too hard toward the entrepreneurial and revolutionary. Slow down, gentlemen. Take some time and think.
What is this fantasy that Peterson has that there is a team there to begin with, that Trump has ever been interested in a team, that the Republicans have been playing for anything other than the fascist team since Supreme Court justices have been stolen? This isn't about the effectiveness or the mythology of a team. This is about the practical lived experience of the people at the end of these crazy and malignant fucks decision making. All of the populist enthusiasm that someone who's not plugged in or can't understand or doesn't care in a sincere enough way that would bolster that agenda is not license for you to come in and polish it. It's an opportunity to say, fuck, we are still really, really dumb and scared animals, and there are a lot of forces who are just keen enough and politically savvy enough to utilize those forces for power. And because now you are a rich, powerful person, you see yourself in these people, let's do my own armchair analysis, and it feels right to apologize for them. It feels right to show solidarity, to get other people on board, because you need the noise and you need the conversation to never stop, so the darkness at the pit of your fucking soul can't remind you of the depth of the consequences that you are enabling for us all.